Okay. All right, let's get into it, everybody. Again, breaking news one more time. The Mets have signed Luke Weaver to a 2-year, $22 million contract, as he will be the man that will essentially be the Tyler Rogers replacement for this Mets team. A guy that will come in quality innings of both the 7th and or 8th inning, depending on the circumstance. A former starter that the Mets actually showed interest in going back to the 2022 offseason. They wanted to initially add as a depth move that could be utilized as a swingman. Instead, Luke Weaver lands with the New York Yankees, has a lot of success with him in 2024. We see him have continued success in 2025. Not as good as what we saw in 2024, but not terrible by any stretch of the imagination. And I told you guys again from the start of the offseason that Luke Weaver, Devin Williams, that these guys were locks to be Mets, that they were not going back to the crosstown rival there in the Yankees. And it's, again, not just because of the fact that they're former Yankees, but knowing that they've been in New York for at least a year, if not more, that have handled this market to the point. And now we understand that the Mets and David Stearns have an adamant seat, and not only bringing quality arms, but are bringing guys that know how to handle the media, know how to handle the fan base, and certainly know how to handle everything that New York has to offer for good, for bad, and for sometimes ugly reason. Weaver's going to come into the fold here, everybody, and I do just want to say, I'm not one of these guys that does victory laps when I say I call things, because I get a lot of things wrong. However, I will say it was perfect timing yesterday. We saw the Yankees double down, that the Yankees have genuine interest in a reunion with Luke Weaver, and this was such a David Stearns-esque move in the sense that, one, I said he's got Met written all over him. This was from yesterday, literally. And no, I did not have the inside scoop on this, so I'm not going to act like I did. Sometimes I get relayed information. This was not one of those times. So this was just perfect timing more than anything else. He's got Met written all over him. And then you guys can also see from Joel Sherman the following: the Yankees were not part of the bidding to try to retain Weaver, according to a source. The Mets will now have 3 former New York Yankee closers on their roster: Weaver, Devin Williams, and Clay Holmes, who's now in the rotation. And I just find this hilarious because this is the continued contradiction with media, everybody. You'll first go ahead and see, oh yeah, the Yankees reportedly have genuine interest in the reunion with Luke Weaver, and then you come to find out that they were not even part of the effing bidding in the end. Like, it's just so hilarious to me how this continued contradiction from one source to another always happens this time of year. It can be so frustrating from a fan point of view, and again, from a Mets fan point of view as well. We have seen the Mets in so many markets, so exactly which one is it? I think it really is hilarious. And yes, Larry, I don't mind this move at all. I anticipate that the Mets are going to be signing someone like this. Thank you, everybody, for the donations. Thank you guys kindly for hitting that like and subscribe button on your way in. Shout out to our amazing sponsor at SeatGeek that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs. Simply utilize my promo code WARDY10, that is WARDY10, for 10% off your next ticket purchase. Link down below. Thank you guys kindly for that. Now, let's break down what you guys need to know about Luke Weaver here. That's why you're watching this one. And this is a nice pickup for the New York Mets on all accounts. In case you guys have been living under a rock, let me enlighten you as to what the Mets are now getting in Luke Weaver, who's added to the Mets pet. And the hilarious thing is that I don't think the Mets are done adding rental Yankees currently. When we look at guys like Cody Bellinger and former Yankee reliever turned starter Michael Cain, the Mets may F around and have themselves a 2026 team with Juan Soto and right, having Clay Holmes there at starter, having Luke Weaver and Devin Williams commanding the back end of your bullpen, having Michael Cain in your rotation, and having Cody Bellinger in left field. Like, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of hilarious that it might get from bad to worse for fans that hate the idea of the Mets bringing in former Yankee players. I certainly think it's going to continue with the trend that we've seen at this point. But let's go down here. Let's take a look at Weaver. And why is this glitching so bad? I have no clue. We're just going to ignore that for a second. That's perfectly fine. Focus on the innings that you guys can see here. Luke Weaver has spent a couple years with the Yankees that we have seen as more of a true reliever for them, and he's been solid. We've seen Weaver with 84 innings in the 2024 season with an 11 K per 9 and looking at right around a sub 3 walks per 9, a 2.89 ERA, as well as a 3.3 expected ERA, a 1 WAR for that season for Weaver, who had the home run per 9 of 1 home run per 9, which is certainly better than the year prior in 123 innings as mostly starter. The final year he was really starter there in Major League Baseball still in 123. He had a home run per 9 of over 2. Weaver was just serving on meatballs constantly, and that was not good for him at all. Then we see everybody in 2025 for the Yanks this year. 64 innings, so 20 innings less for Weaver. A 10 K per 9 to pretty much an identical walks per 9 there, right around a 2.78. He would go on to have a home run per 9 a little bit higher, inflated to almost a 1.4 and a 3.6 ERA, but actually a better expected ERA this year, which I thought was nice to see, 2.96. 1.6, a FIP 3.89, which leaves a bit to be desired, and a half WAR season. So again, Luke Weaver's not a guy that you're looking at and you're saying, oh my God, the bullpen is settled. There's nothing to worry about, that we have everything exactly how we want it. But I do want to make clear that bringing in someone like Weaver is certainly how you're going to help shore up the back end of the bullpen nonetheless. This is a guy that's going to come in and is going to eat a lot of innings for you, for better or for worse. This is the route the Mets are going to go down. And when we break down Weaver and his arsenal, again, that too, there's quite a bit to be happy about. Again, I've liked Weaver, especially since he's transitioned as a quality reliever here for the Yankees. I will just say it's kind of a bummer in the sense that Desi Driscoll left the organization, who was initially our assistant pitching coach, just because he worked firsthand with Luke Weaver, and that would have been a nice connection to continue. Desi, of course, left after the Mets parted ways with Jeremy Hefner and basically said, Desi, you know, we're not going to upgrade you in a role, but you can certainly stay in the organization or look elsewhere in the meantime while we figure out exactly what we would like to do moving forward. And Desi left in the process. Again, hit that like and subscribe on your way in, everybody. Let's go ahead and break down what you guys need to know on Luke Weaver, the latest reliever signing for the New York Mets. But this is a man who, again, has had some nasty off-speed and breaking pitches when he has been right. Let's take a look at the arsenal, what he's bringing to the table and leaves. Especially this past season, we see a 76th percentile pitcher run value, 65th in fastball run value, 89th in off-speed run value, 90th in expected ERA, 95th in expected batting average, 91st in chase percentage, 89th in whip percentage, 82nd in K percentage, above league average in walk percentage, league average in barrel percentage, above league average in hard hit percentage. Ground ball percentage was at a 1 because he's not a ground ball pitcher and doesn't have much extension for a 6'2" 180-pound frame. He has a four-seam fastball, which he threw right around 60% of the time. This past year, a little under at 95 plus, top and 98 on the gunner. So change up 30% of the arsenal, sitting right around 88, top and 90 plus. Cutter, 9% of the arsenal, sitting right around 92. Slider at 2% of the arsenal, right around 87. So that is what you have in the Luke Weaver makeup. But that's what you saw in 2025. Now, if we compare that to 2024, again, 2024 was honestly pretty much on the nose in comparison. There is not much different here. When you just look at the side-by-side and your difference, guys. You're really not going to see much, as I mentioned. A little bit better in 2024, but nothing overly drastic. And hopefully for Weaver and the Mets, this is a guy that can come in, eat at least 70-plus innings for them next season in the 7th and or 8th inning area, and then go on from there. So do I think the Mets are done making moves for their bullpen? Absolutely not. They're most certainly going to be more involved that we're going to see moving forward to hopefully, again, bring in some of those guys from the San Diego Padres. Do I think this impacts things in regards to Lanny Mason Miller? I don't think it does. I just do think that, however, it's obvious that Lanny Mason Miller is probably more unlikely than likely in a trade with the Padres. I feel like guys like Adrian Morejon and Jeremiah Estrada are still far more realistic. I think Morejon makes even more sense now after bringing in someone like Weaver, so that way you can have a flamethrowing lefty to be a nice contrast to your other options in your bullpen, as the Mets really don't have that right now. You'd like to, of course, bring in a flamethrowing right-hander, and Estrada fits that bill too. But the Mets are currently putting themselves in a position, again, where, in my opinion, I think that this is a route that they were always going to be going down for their bullpen. And I think that even if they say brought back Edwin Diaz, that they would have also signed Weaver to pretty much the same structured contract. Getting Weaver at just over $10 million a year across 2 years is nothing to scoff at all. I think that this is a contract that should bode well for this team. And especially after losing someone like Tyler Rogers, you needed a guy that can come in and eat quality innings the way that Weaver does. And I love the fact that he's been in the New York market the past couple years. I love the fact that he's handled the Bronx well. And listen, I understand that Weaver had ups and downs this past year. So did Williams, even though Williams had a lot more to do with just transitioning to living in New York, how to go about his day-to-day living. He said it publicly since signing with the Mets, especially that was really the biggest hurdle in his way that we saw with his lack of early success with the Yankees. For Weaver, a very charismatic personality, a guy who I know Aaron Judge loves deeply, and someone who supposedly, again, the Yanks had genuine interest in wanting to return, but then we see reporting from Joel Sherman, the New York Post today, which states the complete opposite, that the Yankees weren't even part of the bidding. So I don't really know what to believe on the Yankees' interest or lack thereof. But what I do know is that Weaver checked off a lot of boxes for the Mets, especially after you lost Edwin Diaz and Tyler Rogers. It only made it more obvious that they were going to be going into direction to bring in an innings eater like him. And I like the appeal with someone like Weaver, where if the Mets did want to get creative, they could utilize him in a swingman role if they really felt they needed to do so. Again, I'm not saying that the Mets should do that per se, or that I want that. I'm just saying Weaver brings more of a creative avenue for you versus going after some other relievers, like even a Brad Keller who just signed with the Phillies, who again had a dominant 2025. That's not a bad thing, but we have seen the risks involved when you sign relievers coming off of great years when they didn't have the track record prior to necessarily warrant the contract or payday that they were getting. All in all, I think that was a nice pickup for the Phillies because they have a really good pitching lab there. A buddy of mine works in their pitching lab, as a matter of fact. I'm wishing him well, and I do think that that is something that will bode well for them in the end. But the Mets, they had to, of course, make a move, and it would have sucked to see the Braves bring in Robert Suarez and for the Phillies to bring in a nice, really quality reliever in Brad Keller, and for the Mets to sit on their hands and do nothing until not only, say, Luke Weaver's off the board when you need another innings eater. We know Pete Fairbanks is still out there, even though I'm not going to get my hopes up on the Pete Fairbanks front. He's someone who I like, and I know the Mets like as well, but is he someone that the Mets in confidence are going to sign? I don't know if the Mets are going to overspend on someone like him. I think that the Mets may very well, again, as I've said before, have themselves more in the manner, more in the appetite for guys in the trade market, which is completely valid and justified. There's a lot of really nice relievers out there if you can try to swing them in the trade market for some prospects that you're not going to lose sleep over. But to be determined as to what exactly David Stearns does on that front. But for right now, the Mets bring in Weaver. He's going to be someone who I think will command things just fine. I think he's someone that, yes, we're going to still miss the Tyler Rodgers in the end, because Tyler Rodgers is more of a, I think, surefire guaranteed thing and what you're getting than Weaver, and that's what frustrated me so much on the Mets' lack of moving above and beyond to bring him back. I don't care that he's entering his age 35 season. He's an anomaly of a reliever that sits 84 in his fastball, and it doesn't matter because that's how quality he is on getting the best ground balls out, ground ball rates, and everything else in baseball for the most part. Weaver, while he is not that good, he's still very much quality for what the Mets need right now. And now when you look at the current configuration of the Mets bullpen, it's far from sexy, but they're finally starting to figure out what the look is going to be heading into next season. You have Devin Williams. You have Luke Williams. Not Devin Williams. Yes, Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, who, of course, know each other well from being in the bullpen with the Yankees this past year. You now have Brooks Raley, AJ Minter. God willing, those guys can stay healthy, especially AJ, because we only got a cup of coffee with him before he went down with a season-ending injury. You look beyond them and you see, okay, there's some upside with guys like Dylan Ross and Ryan Lambert, flamethrowers in the Mets minor leagues right now. And you say, okay, we do have Huascar Brosnan under contract still, and you say that half jokingly. But beyond that, it's slim pickings as to what is a guaranteed thing. And that is why not only going after, again, those guys that we had previously mentioned the Mets are in trade talks with, one or multiple of Mason Miller, Jeremiah Estrada, Adrian Marjon types, going after continued guys in the free agent market. If you can really come out with an impressive offer for someone like Pete Fairbanks, if it's warranted to do so, you just got to make sure that you don't settle. That's the most important thing. This is a nice move, and we said the same thing about Devin Williams, but a nice move only stays a nice move if you move more laterally or marginally around them. So I think that's been my consistent voice to the fans, trying to, I think, resonate with as many of you guys as I possibly can. I just did a video on my other YouTube channel at WardyMLB that is collaborated with WardyNYM that you guys can check out on. It's literally titled "What the F Are the Mets Doing?" And it's a nice thorough breakdown on the fallouts of Alonso and Diaz. And again, for right or wrong reason, this is now the David Stearns way and vision that we're going forward in. And what I've been very consistent on is that I can deal with the David Stearns route as long as once the dust finally settles this offseason, we have a product that we're actually satisfied with what he built for this roster. It's really hard to do with the amount of things that he needs to fill up before we get to spring training. So to be determined, jury's still out there as to if he's going to get the job done. There's a contingent of Mets fans that say, okay, the Mets are clearly going in rebuild. I think that was nonsense then. I stand on that now. I think it's still a retool. I think the Mets are trying to build this in a different direction, but they're still trying to build to compete next year. And if I'm wrong, I have no problem correcting myself though either, because I'll be right up there with the pitchfork and the fire saying that the Mets aren't even trying, or they're going with the label, at least we tried in 2026. No, I won't be content with that whatsoever. So again, I don't believe that is the direction that Stearns and the Mets are going in. I think that they're going to make some really big moves this offseason. It just has not happened yet. And the counter has been that the big moves that have happened so far this offseason, some of the biggest across MLB as a whole, have been losing our top stars. So again, justified reason why fans feel the way that they do. I'm going to get to some comments here shortly, everybody. But before I do so, continue to smash that like and subscribe on your way in. We're giving away a brand new Mets jersey once we get a 37,000 subscribers, and we're just under 300 subs away. So thank you so much for exactly that. And also, how fitting is it that the New York Mets, listen to this timeline, everybody. 2024, New York Yankees bullpen. Clay Holmes, who had previously been the closer for the Yanks for at least a couple of years, loses the closer role after a very shaky first half of the year in 2024. Who does he go ahead and lose that closer role to? Oh yeah, it's Luke Weaver. Then we see 2025. Clay Holmes is now stretched out as a starter in the Mets rotation. Luke Weaver, we see utilized as a closer in increments because Devin Williams lost the closer role early that we saw after really being scared of his own shadow, still getting adjusted to the Bronx in New York, and that's easier said than done at times. And then Weaver eventually losing the closer role back to Williams because Williams ultimately was the better option down the stretch, especially in the second half for the Yankees. Now, over the past 2 years, the Mets have literally collected all the Infinity Stones of these former closers for the Yanks. It's honestly hilarious just because of how consistent it's been. So yeah, I mean, to any Yanks fan that's like, oh my God, you always want our sloppy seconds and stuff, like, we can't say you're entirely wrong, but it doesn't mean that these players are bad. I'm just a little more taken aback by the fact that supposedly, according to Joel Sherman again of the New York Post, is that the Yankees didn't even really put in a valiant effort for Weaver. They weren't even part of the bidding. And this was literally not even a full day removed from reports yesterday stating the contrary, that the Yankees had genuine interest in bringing him back. So again, which one is it? So let's get into some of these comments real quick, everybody, and then let's continue to break down Luke Weaver and his arsenal. We'll get into specifically the certain pitches that he has really dominated and looked best in so far as he has transitioned ahead. Thank you guys for the donations, too, to everyone who has done it. I really appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. We're going to speed run this. Cherno says, with the $5 holla, Dream Weaver, I believe you can get me through the night. Pump for this one. That high whiff four seam is right up Willard's alley. Wanted Luke so bad. Again, I know Justin Willard is going to certainly do a great job working one-on-one with Weaver now, and there's some familiarity as well, too. Let's not forget, Carlos Mendoza was the bench boss for the Yankees in the first year for Weaver that we saw. Actually, you know what? I'm correcting myself. I apologize. I don't know if they actually ever worked together because Weaver didn't land with the Yanks until 2024, right? If that's true, then that's right when Mendoza started being manager for the Yankees. So I digress. Okay, thank you so much for that donation, though. I appreciate it. And yeah, I am looking forward to seeing what Weaver can do. Again, getting probably at least 70-plus innings next season. Lloyd with the $5 holla says, now the Mets need to acquire more bats to make up for Pete. I don't disagree with you at all. And the Mets are in the market for more of a bat-first player. Kyle Tucker fills that narrative. If you're after a bat and defensively minded player, then Cody Bellinger fits that one. And so does Alex Bregman. What do those guys have in common? Those are all players that we have broken down the platform over the past 24 hours. Anthony with $5 holla says, love this signing. Does this mean we are out on Mason Miller? I think Belly, Skubal, Pivetta, and Miller are next. I do not anticipate the Mets to land both Skubal and Miller in the trade this offseason. I think it would only be one or the other, and even that still feels like a pipe dream right now. But huge overpay, Mark. It isn't a huge overpay. It's just over $10 million a year for someone who's going to eat 70-plus innings for us next year to hopefully at worst a 3.5-year Ray. That is not an overpay. That's market value currently. And if that was an overpay, I promise you David Stearns will be the first to nip it in the butt, considering that he has shown a level of stubbornness in how he spends and where. Thank you so much again for the donation, Anthony. But I definitely think guys like Belly, Pivetta, and some of those relievers, I can't necessarily promise Mason Miller, but I think someone in that pot of gold that is truly the riches that the bullpen is for the Padres that they have between Mason Miller, Adrian Marjon, Jeremiah Estrada. We'd be happy with any of those three. But Mason Miller is the creme de la creme at the top, obviously. Dave with the $2 holla, thank you so much. Next pickup for the Mets, Mariano Rivera. Yep, who says no at this point? Mad Seeing Parents with the $5 holla, thank you. Phil signed Brad Keller, who had an outstanding 2024 when he became a full-time reliever for the same deal. Gave me Dombrowski anytime. Yeah, again, I just broke down how we saw Brad Keller had a fantastic past season. I think you meant to say 2025 because I'm almost certain that he didn't have a good 2024 unless I missed the mark here and he was out with injury this past year. Regardless, I just know that his last season was very good, but prior to that, there was a lot to be desired. So I don't disagree with you. I like Keller as a profile. I thought he was a guy that also made sense given the guys that the Mets have lost over the past couple weeks in the free agent and trade market. But here we are. Again, bullpen right now, as is. Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, Brooks Raley, AJ Minter, Huascar Brosban, Alzolay, who we can't forget about. For those that don't know, Alzolay, who's currently pitching and doing well in the Dominican Winter League, back in 2023, ate some really good innings and pitched at a very quality rate or so for the Chicago Cubs. I think in 2023, 2024 range, but he's been out with injury, but now he's been working back fully healthy for a good stretch of time now that we have seen there in Florida as he's been training, now getting set for eventually spring training and beyond. Let's see here, everybody. Again, thank you so much to everyone hitting that like and subscribe on your way in. Let's see. And the Mets signed him last offseason, Rebecca. Let's see. Nezzy says, Wardy, do you think the Mets will get a starting pitcher? And what about Tucker or Bellinger? I do think that one of Tucker or Bellinger is feasible. I really hope it happens. And secondly, yes, I do believe the Mets will land at least one starter at minimum. Could be two at maximum this offseason. Let's see. Nick with the $10 holla. Thank you so much. Wardy Weaver, good pickup. And I heard we offered Belly 6 years, $180 million. Have you heard anything? I have not heard anything along those lines. If the Mets go 6, $180, I know that we're not going to love that contract, but I also know we're going to be happy in what we're immediately getting. But no, I have not heard anything from credible sources to suggest what you stated is true at this point in time. Thank you for the donation nonetheless. If we get Bregman, would you include Beatty in a trade for Skubal? I think that goes without saying. If you land Bregman, then that makes Beatty unbelievably expendable. Not that we want to trade Beatty, it's just common sense. You don't upgrade third base with Bregman to then have Beatty have a limited role in your team moving forward when we know the value that he brings and currently has a solid amount of trade value. And the Tigers have had an appetite for Brett Beatty in trade talks over the past calendar year. So yeah, I definitely think that that's feasible. Again, does he get traded? That being Skubal, though, still to be determined as to if the Tigers will find the deal they're looking for. Cameron with the $5 holla. After letting Alonso and Diaz leave, do you think Cohen wants to lower payroll because he thinks the next CBA will include a salary cap? I don't think that's as much of a concern as others are making out to be. You have to realize the Mets are already pushing north of 300 again on their payroll, and they have to spend well above and beyond this offseason to put out a product that I think a lot of fans will be satisfied or relatively happy with. So no, I do not believe that idea to be true currently. Mets not training for Skubal. Get it out of your head. We'll get it out of our heads once spring training and or the season is here and he's towing the rubber for opening day for the Tigers. Until then, everyone's perfectly fine and continue to want to have that discourse. Ramos, thank you so much for the $10 holla. I really appreciate that too, my guy. Thank you. Hoping the best for you and your family in a very happy holiday season. Let's see. Cameron with the $5 holla. Thank you again for that one. I appreciate it. Now, to break down more on Luke Weaver, everybody, let's get into his successes that we saw with his Arsenal this past season. Then after that, we'll cut things off for our replay viewers, and then we will continue on for our live viewers to break down more on Weaver, this signing, and what it means for the New York Mets moving forward as they look to continue to build their bullpen this offseason. As we take a look at Luke Weaver, everybody, again, you have the four seam, the changeup, the cutter, and the slider. And we take a look also at what his pitch usage has been. We saw something change significantly from going from a starter to a reliever. And as you guys can see from this trend beside me, courtesy of Baseball Savant, who always have some of the best information on individual players' arsenals and breakdowns. And the 2023 season, the final time that Luke Weaver was really starter makeup, had 25 starts in 29 games. We saw him throw his changeup that we saw right around 20% of the time. And then we saw slider around 10, knuckle curve right around 12. We saw sinker at 2 and four seam at 42%. As we get into his first year with the New York Yankees, and mind you, working with Desi Drusilla at the time, who is no longer in the Mets organization, but was with us this past season with Hefner, he jumps to 48% there now as a reliever, changing his usage. His changeup goes up to 27 to roughly 28%. His cutter skyrockets from being utilized only not even 12% of the time to 22% of the time. And at the bottom, he completely botches and throws away his knuckle curve. He also uses nothing of his sinker and his slider. So what's interesting here is that he definitely has, that arsenal to handle that starter makeup again. And the Mets want to expand it for him. And I have a feeling that under Willard, that's what they're going to do. Because let's not forget, Devin Williams said in his presser with the Mets that he will be expanding his arsenal as we get into next season. He will be utilizing the cutter more and throwing a bit more of a gyro slider as well. This is something that he was planning to do and something that he's been but having good conversations with Justin Willard of the Mets pitching department to maximize. So Williams, who was really happy with all of his expected numbers last year, they were all on par with his career, some of them even better than previous seasons. He's looking to make himself even better than before, and now we're going to see if Luke Weaver, as he taps in to his first year with the Mets, that's the big question that I have, will he deviate away from being this 3-pitch pitcher to going back to at least a 4-pitch pitcher? Will they be able to maximize his sinker again in ways that he could actually have effective usage out of it, whereas he's only had a little success of it at the major league level? The slider, is that something that they could get creative with, whether it's a tight slider, whether they bring more of a sweeper in action? Again, a sweeper is going to be devastating if he's facing lefties more than likely, but that is something that could be a play if it's going to be maximized against righties. Again, I'm not the pitching guru. I'm just saying that I am curious to see, should they wish to expand it. This would not be uncommon for how the Mets have operated with their pitching department, because in 2025, we saw him skyrocket even more with a 4-seam because of that high rising fastball. Roughly 60% usage, okay? And that was the most usage that he's had since the 2022 season. So going back to his starter makeup there with this 4-seam fastball, and he did have success, but also again gave up a little bit more barrels that we saw. Had a home run rate in 20 innings less. That was higher than what he had in 20 innings more and this season prior in 2024. Again, right around 30% now of the changeup. The most he's utilized it since going back to his starter role, and completely dropped the cutter. The cutter went from 22% usage, where he had levels of success in 2024, to not even 10% in 2025, and the slider just at 1.6%. So not a whole lot there for the most part. Now let's get into the pitch that had the most swing and miss for him. Let's take a look at what he was actually getting the most strikeouts on, and that was that 4-seam fastball. Had 44 strikeouts with the 4-seam this past year that we saw. We also had 22 strikeouts on the changeup and then just 1 on the cutter. If we look at that in comparison to 2024, in 2024, he had equal distribution in his strikeouts from the 4-seam to the changeup. So again, not as much of a maximization and utilizing both those pitches to, I think, what he would like to. Again, heavier 4-seam fastball usage this past year, but we saw the changeup, smaller sample size of innings, not have the same level of effectiveness in swing and miss. He also had the cutter with 11 strikeouts, where this year he only got 1. So the cutter usage obviously was utilized less completely, but also wasn't getting the bite that he was previously having too. So this is one of these pitchers that I look at and I say to myself, okay, I know he's going to be eating at least 70 to 80 innings for us more than likely next season and potentially the year after, going into his age 33 and 34 seasons. Weaver is one of these guys that can handle back-to-back days, but like anything else, you just need to understand he can be susceptible to the long ball. Thankfully, the Mets pitch in a pitcher's park, which is contrary to what you have with a short porch at Yankee Stadium. That should only bode well for him and how he will perform in Flushing, Queens, God willing, but it doesn't change the fact that he is someone that will hang pitches from time to time. So the Mets need to make sure that they just don't work him like a dog. And that's something that they may throw him in the role to do. Because again, that's what Tyler Rogers would have been thrown in the role to do if the Mets were able to bring him back. So now that they lost out on Rogers, they're going with Weaver, who I think was kind of their consolation prize. I think that there's a world that they would have signed Weaver even if they brought in Edwin Diaz and Rogers, but maybe I'm thinking too crazy. I just know that Stearns does want to build a super bullpen by having a lot of guys with high quality innings, high quality upside, and that's why I won't be shocked if they still go ahead and trade for some top relievers that the Padres currently have somewhat available, at least in trade talks right now. Let's see. Austin Warren. Yeah, Austin Warren isn't a terrible option either. Warren had levels of success with the Mets this past season for sure, for those that did not pay attention. But we'll see obviously how he does in 2026 for them. He was utilized more in a pinch than anything else. But in case you guys are just chiming in and missed the news, again, once more, the Mets have signed Luke Weaver, that we have seen, to a 2-year, $22 million contract. The Yankees were not part of the bidding in trying to retain Weaver, which again is so contrary to this report from a day prior. The Yanks are reportedly having genuine interest in him. I said he's got Met written all over him, I'm telling you. And I then put out the typical post of the tribal chief of acknowledge me today, because I didn't even have it as a source. It was just beautifully timed more than anything else. As I scroll my phone real quick, I do just want to make sure that I don't miss any other key detail regarding this signing that you guys should know about. And I also did want to show you guys too one more thing, which I found, cool, just in the sense that even though it's different regimes, again, the Mets have been in Weaver's market for well beyond just his tenure with the New York Yankees. And obviously there was some similar like-mindedness from Billy Epler to Stearns, albeit maybe not a crazy amount. But as you guys can see here, again, going back to my post in 2022 of March, per Andy Martino, the Mets have been doing homework on Diamondbacks starting pitcher Luke Weaver. And Luke Weaver at the time there in 2022 was still going to be a starter for the next, year and a half, 2 years. So at that point, the Mets were looking at Weaver as really a guy that can come in any innings for them, which made levels of sense because what was happening in March of 2022? Oh yeah, the Mets were still dealing with injuries because of course they were. We all saw it together, right? And 2022 is when the Mets didn't even have a guy like Jacob deGrom really impacting them much at all until we got ourselves in the summer, and then he helped the Mets dominate in that huge winning, I think, 3 out of 4 series, including a doubleheader at home against the Atlanta Braves. That's when aura was a thing for us, and we felt like we were on our all-time high, separate from the 2024 Mets run. But going all the way back to the beginning of that year, spring training time, the Mets were in the market for looking for swingman type pitchers that can come in and eat innings in creative ways. Let's see here. What happened in the... I'm sorry. I'm just reading something that I thought was funny. Anyways, Luke Weaver now with the New York Mets, and this does go beyond his Yankee tenure for Yankees fans that are just saying that, oh, the Mets only like him because of what he did with the Yanks. No, but at the same time, he's shown his success as a reliever with the Yankees, so that is true in itself. But everyone watching live, folks, we're going to continue on the live show here for a bit. I want to answer plenty of your comments, questions, and concerns regarding the Mets and what they're building for their bullpen. For everyone that's watching on replay, we will cut things off here now, however, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on your way in and on your way out. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. This is our latest breakdown on all breaking Mets news here in Metsland as the Mets officially acquire Luke Weaver on a 2-year, $22 million contract to be their quality ready option for 7th and or 8th innings in 2026 and beyond. Everyone watching live, let's continue on the live show. People watching on replay, this is where we will be cutting things off.